Good morning, everyone. Today we are gonna be actually talking about next studying. It is your friend Pamik from Bangalore, and let's actually have a look at the next studying and the next year's yourself. So let's actually go to the Google and next year's docs. Right, we will be actually learning from the next year's docs itself. These are the beta docs, and these are actually the previous docs which we have from the next year's studying. Right. So if we actually go to the beta docs, right, they have a lot more new functionalities and a lot more things. So we will actually covering these all things in a bit of brief today, right? So actually get started, right? So what's actually new in the next study? Next study actually introduces you the concept of say server-side components, which are the components which actually work on the server side. So what's in the installation, right? Getting started. Firstly, how to actually get started. So next is documentation is divided into two sections. Next 13 app directory, right? You are here, right? This actually next 13 app directory means which is actually the new directory of the next 13, and you will need to install this way if you want to actually install the next 13 app directory structure, right? In the previous Next.js structure, there was a page structure, but now we have the app directory structure. So you will actually need to use this command that is actually at the latest, and that's an experimental app, right? And then it will actually create this new whole directory structure with that. Otherwise, if you don't want to actually use this create next app, then you will actually need to use these directly by using the npm install in your project structure, and then use the scripts like npm. For the dev, you will actually you have the next dev. You can either type next dev onto your console, and or dev if you actually want to just use this particular script, right? You will actually use the npm run dev, and it will actually run the next step behind the scenes, right? So yeah, that will actually happen, and you also need to actually use this configuration into your say next.config.js if you want to actually use the experimental app directory, right, which is newer in the next one. And the layout and now we also need to create a root layout, right, in the app slash layout.tsx file, right, in which you actually need to define all of the say html structure, right, with the body tag, and inside the body you will actually have the children, and every of the page will actually come inside the children. This is actually similar to the index.html file which you have actually found in React, you might have found, right. You have this layout.tsx file, right. This tutorial, also this session, actually assumes that you already have prior knowledge about say a bit of React and say Next.js. If you don't, then there's no problem. I'm also a beginner and you're also a beginner. Let's actually do it together. So we have this page.tsx file, right. So what is this page.tsx file? Page.tsx file is similar to the index.html file which you have found in many of the projects and stacks, right? The index or the main file is actually referred to here by the page dot something file, right? TSX actually stands for the TypeScript, and the X stands for that you can also use the JavaScript in here also without specifying types strictly. So yeah, you have this. Good to know. If you forget to create a layout.ts, next is automatically create this file for you when running the phone. Okay. So even if you don't use to create the layout.ts, it will actually create a default layout.ts file for you. So yes, that's actually the basic stuff, right? We can also create the whole of the files or clean files by us, or we can actually use the create next app. But I won't use any of them because it will actually take a lot of time to actually install. So I will use the code sandbox.io. You can actually go to the code sandbox.io, and then you can actually create your project for free. You first need to actually sign up or sign in, whether you have already done or not, on the basis of that. And then you will actually just start a new project here, right? So it's actually signing in for now, right? Sign with Google, right? It's like will ask me my ID, right? And let me just install. Yeah, signing up in. Okay, so signed in. Yeah, done. I've already signed up, so it will just ask you 2 3 questions, so you can actually do that. What I can do is that I can actually create from a dashboard, create from a template, or I can actually see my own project which I've actually working on earlier. So let me actually show you how to actually create a new next starting application. So you can actually type on the next starting 13, right, and it will actually show you a template, a basic template of the next 13, right, which you can use. So here if we actually will choose that, I'm like to create that project for me in some time, and yes, it is actually building up. It will actually give me a browser in which I can actually see my app running, and it's actually lighter and easier and also faster in comparison to the normal VS Code setup which I will have. On a quick tour of the code sandbox, yes, you can actually show me around. Yeah, so it will actually show you all of the things, right. First is actually have this particular say run your code in the cloud, right? Okay, I know that. And then you have, say, user powerful tools like these, right? You have the open previews, console triggers, or the lint, build, deploy, and much more. So here what you have the powerful tools here, and which you can actually use for the previews and all, right? These are the three ones. You have also the terminal here, right? Okay, so nicer. That's actually nicer. Where is that? Okay, so it's actually somewhere here, right? Nice. I was actually trying to find the terminal. So you have the terminal, right? And we have, say, add database on the server, go limits and build full stack with the Docker support. Okay, so you have also Docker support here, right? Which it's actually kind of a container in which you might have images, right? Contains and feedback. Okay, so you can also share the URLs here, right? So you have all this support, right, with the Next.js, right? Okay, so this is actually your code, and okay, so this is actually okay, so this is actually MD file, right? And here you have the terminals, right? If you want to actually terminal, then you can actually get the new terminal, right? You can actually say pwd, and a command will actually work here. You can actually also use npm command, right? If I actually use npm, it will actually show you npm usage, so you can actually install the things into your npm. That's basically how you can actually go for this terminal, right? Yeah, I can actually minimize this stuff, right? This is actually I can actually go keep it downwards, and it's actually really handy, right? According to me. So you can actually use the npm command. So I can just minimize it. Okay, I can't give my sign, right? Okay, no issues. Yeah, so this is actually our page working up in the Next.js study, right? A quick look at the particular. This is just a readme MD file, not of our use much. We will be working on this particular, say, app directory, right? Which is actually having all of the pages, right? All of the pages will be actually first start with a folder. The folder name will be actually just referring to your particular URL. Like this about is actually referring to this the slash about, right? After your URL, you will be actually able to look at the slash about, right? That will be actually referring to this about page, right? Slash about means that you are actually going to look in your app directory a folder name, say about, and then inside it you have the page.tsx, which will be actually rendered here. That is, well, come to the next setting. All of this is actually rendered there. Similarly, for the home, you have, say, route of the slash and the slash route. As the I have already suggested, the page.tsx file is actually for the index.js, and that's why this page.tsx will be the index.js for this app directory, means the home or the root directory. Inside it, you are just returning the page index as a text here inside a div that's actually a parent. And where are these navs coming from? Navs are actually coming from the layout.tss file, as we have already learned that layout.tss file is actually the one which actually defines the layout for the whole app, right, for every page. So what you're doing in this, you're actually defining an HTML structure, right, from the HTML here to here, and inside the body you are actually having three link tags. Tags are nothing other than the A tags, but with the custom functionalities of the Next.js. That is, they don't use to reload the page and don't use to actually create a new request. Instead, they use to just fetch the content of the new page into the same page, and you don't use to see the reload thing happening. For example, if I actually click on this about, nothing like reload happens here. Reload icon didn't run, but the page actually just changed really quickly, and that's actually what was happening. So above is your, say, navigation, and below it you have the children, and children is actually whatever you have the content in your page. So you have this page of tsx. You can also view your application into a new tab in the browser like this. Yeah, you have this working. Yes, you will actually be able to see in the new tab something like the same. You can also use the console here. You can actually view the things up, right? So let's actually see console, and you can also see the elements. As I've already mentioned, you will first see inside your body. Where is the body? Yeah, inside the body, firstly you have this nav, and then after that you have this particular empty div. Inside the empty div you are actually having this page index, and that div is actually belonging to this particular page, right? That page index itself. So this is actually returned from there. So yeah, that's actually a quick walkthrough, and also not to forget about the APIs, right? Inside the pages folder, you have this API route, right? Pages is actually the old directory which you have in the next wall, right? So yeah, you have this pages directory, and inside it you have this app route. App route is actually having a hello.ts. So that whenever you actually type slash API slash that particular route name, it will actually work for you. For example, let me actually quickly actually create a new route for you, and that is API. And inside the API folder, I can actually create a new route, right? Say new file, right? Something like say, I can actually create a test route, right? Test.tsx, and this route will be actually created. Okay, so test.tsx, and inside it you have to actually export async, and then you also need to export it default async handler, and then you have the request, and then you have the response, and inside it you will return something and return sorry function. Yeah, and in this return you will have the JSON method, a request, a response.json, because the response object which is actually coming you is actually of type next API response, and it has the JSON method, right? And inside which you can actually specify the response like say a and then value, something like that. So it will be actually triggered up whenever you have this test API fired up. So currently we are actually in the root one, so we can actually go ahead with slash API slash test, because our file name is slash test. So it will actually give you that particular response that's actually coming as an API response. That's how API works in the Next.js, right? You will actually refer to it. It will actually send you a response. After, you can also do the server side operations here, right? Because it's actually working on the server side and not on the client side. So you can actually go here, like say yeah, you can actually go here and then say I am running here, something like this, right? And what you actually can console after running this, it will actually not fire automatically. You will need to refresh to actually say give a request. And after that, if you actually have a look at console, where is that I'm running? There's no I'm running, because it's actually running here on the server side. You can't actually look at the particular thing, I think. Yeah, because actually it's a different terminal. It's actually running the server side code on a different terminal, I believe, right? On which you will actually see the output. If you actually run on localhost, then you can easily look at that output. Otherwise, you can use Replit. There's actually the option to run the code online, right? So yeah, let's actually build a brief and let's actually start learning. So this was how you can actually get started with your Next.js application, right? And I believe it is working on phones. I don't know. I've never used, so okay. So these are already set up, like this next config experimental app directory to true are already set up in this particular template, right? So if you actually go ahead to say next.config.js, you'll be able to have a look at the next config object, which is being exported as a module export, right? So yeah, it's already done for you, and that's why you are actually able to use this app directory. Otherwise you might have done that thing in the pages folder, right? Into the pages folder, if you have actually created a file, say new file, say test page, I must say old page, the tsx, and that will actually be here, old page.tsx. I will have function and then old page, and then I will have props, and then I can also export here or here, both ways, no worries. And then return maybe this div, and then div, you can return anything. We are just learning, so we are just returning a div, all page, and you can export here default, because every file need to have a default export, because this is actually a page. After exporting in default, it won't give me any error, but it's actually giving an error on props. And this is actually not error, just a TypeScript a lint that is actually telling that it's actually not having a type. So if we specify the props ourselves as of type any, there's actually TypeScript will say okay, it can be of type any, so it will actually be running. So if I actually go ahead and remove this API, and if I actually use this old page, then it must actually work. And can actually go to here also. Okay, so a bit late. Yeah, so old page is actually working. Whatever you have returned is actually returning on this particular page, and that's actually about your basic Next.js setup. This is how you can actually create. So as I've actually said that you can also use the old page directory in integration with the new app directory until there is no clashes, because if you actually create a folder named the old page here, then there will be a clash, because in the next setting you have the folder to be the name of the route, and you can't actually just give them at this place and this place, because it will be a clash. So this will actually be not allowed, but yes, you can always do separately with using different names. So yeah, let's actually look further. That's about the basics, right? About the next year study. So we have this root layout, right? This is actually a keyword, right? This name is actually fake, right? The root layout, and then inside it you actually pass the children. The children is actually a page which is being passed. Now I have this children. I finally create a homepage app.ts with the initial content, something like that. Running a development server, we actually used to use npm run dev. It will be by default on the localhost 3000. As a port, you can also change the port, I think, by using hyphen p, I think. Yeah. Now you have to create your first route running fundamentals, and let's go on. So okay, in the guide, if you were using the Next.js 12 directory, then you have this whole upgrade guide that how to actually go to Next.js 13, right? It's actually referring to you all of the features, right? All of the things we are actually mentioned, right? That is what you need to change, right? Firstly, you will actually need to install the next 13, that is next at very later, by using this flag. This will actually install the latest next into your project, and also the React will be also latest, and the DOM will be also React DOM and React will be actually upgrade to say React 18 if they are on 17. And then you have say latest ES by using this npm install, and then you have say yeah, other features. Next, I think introduce a new app directory that which we have already one in our project running. If you have not, you can actually create by using right click, and manually can also be created. Mixing does not require the use of the app directory. Well, next setting can also be used without this app directory. This is just an experimental feature of say next 13, right? You can continue using the pages, right? As we also mentioned that we can use the app pages, right? And means the pages that will also be still used, and you can use the image component, link component, script components. These are actually the updated one in Next13. The behind the scenes are actually updated, but yes, in the front end, also in whatever is actually available to you will be actually still same. Next, we'll introduce new improvements to the image component, right, with the temporary import like the next slash featured image. These improvements included less client-side JavaScript, easier ways to extend, and style images better, etc. Okay, so there are some say temporary import in the next 12, right? In the version 30, the new behavior is now default to next slash image. Okay, so in the next 12, we have the image component from the next slash future slash image, right, which was actually doing something, let's say lazy import, something like that was actually happening in that 12 version. But here that thing is actually default in the next slash image only, right? Because there was earlier two, but now we have only one module from where we are actually importing image. The two code modes help you to migrate to the new image component, next image, legacy image, code mode. And okay, so what is this code mode? Code mode are actually the ones which are actually say functions, special functions, which allows you to actually do special things like upgrading directly, automatically, something like that. Actually, you can be done with the code modes, right? And right, next image experimental. If you are actually using the images, right, images, normal image tag, then you can actually just convert them to the next image by using this code mode. But yes, remember the thing is that these used to sometimes create error, because they are actually kind of say running kind of parsing behavior, right? They used to parse the things up, and they used to just replace the stuff into your directory. So you will need to keep in mind that it might create errors, and you might need to fix those errors, right? Whatever the errors will come, you will need to fix, right, or manually, because there might be break-ins in your code. Okay, so the link tag component no longer requires manually adding. Okay, so earlier you used to require the a tag to be included inside the link tag, but now only link is required, as we have already seen in the project like this about, and then whatever. Yeah, so there is a script tag, right? Script tag is actually a component here in Next.js, which are used to load the client-side scripts, like we used to do in the script tags, right, in the head. So script is actually an optimized version of that, right? It is actually coming inside the next slash script. And it is supported in both the pages in the app, and but some changes need to be made to ensure, okay, there need to be some changes, okay. And before move any before interactive scripts you previously included in the document.js to a root layout, right? As I've already mentioned, the document.js file is actually converted to the layout.tss file in the app directory now, right? Because earlier you have the document.js, which was the actual document or the page, which was actually wrapping all of the documents in your application, right? All of the pages. Now it is actually the layout.tss folder or the layout.tss file, in which you will actually find the basic HTML structure of your whole project, right? Whole page, right? Basically, because inside the body tag of it, the your page will actually come. But other than that, the nav and other stuffs will actually come inside the document.js kind of say template for your web application, right? The experimental worker strategy does not yet work in the app, and the scripts denoted with this strategy will either have to be removed and modified to a different strategy that is lazy load, right? This is actually related to the script tag, right? Means you have some experimental worker strategy. Means in the experimental object you might have been specifying some say worker strategy, right? That's actually not supported now, right? You need to actually define a different strategy that lazy on load if you wanna load the things lazily, load the scripts lazily. Hello will not work on the support to make sure they move to client home. There are a lot of changes, right? Font optimization is there, right? Previously, Next helped you optimize the font by using an inline font CSS. Version 13 introduced a new Next slash font module beta, which gives you the ability to customize your font loading experience while still ensuring. Okay, so Next 13 font actually gives you another way to use the font. Earlier, they used to just import the font by using the font tag, right? I think you first need to actually import the next slash font, and then you can actually specify the particular font which you're gonna import from the next fonts itself, and then you use also to say the subsets which you wanna need. And yeah, there's another guide for a whole guide for the font optimization which you actually require, something like that, right? This is actually the next font. Firstly, you need to install the npm next slash font by using this command. And then you can actually import the things up from the next itself. You can import the particular font. For example, if you want to use a particular same font inside your whole application, then you can use this way. Like if you want to actually use this inter font, then you can actually just import the inter font from the next slash font slash google. Let's actually try this out. And inside the root layout you have this children and all, and then you can actually use this particular font, right? Something like this. You have imported the inter font by using this way, right? You have first imported that, you have just initialized that inter font, and then you are using the inter dot class name here to actually use that font into your whole of the structure, because the body is actually containing everything, so we can actually use that. So let's actually go ahead with the next slash npm install at the rate next slash font. Okay, so let's copy this up. And where is that? Yeah, inside this we can actually go into our terminal. Not working. Yeah, working. Npm install. Okay, so it's actually installing the things up, and I think it actually installed. If you actually go into your package.json file, right? If you find the next slash font, yeah, next slash font is actually installed, and it's actually next 13 version, so you can use this. Now if you actually go into the layout folder, right? Layout folder, you can actually just import enter font, right? Let's see if it actually gives me IntelliSense. Not giving for now. Yeah, next font giving me. Okay, so inter is actually being used. If we complain that inter is declared, but then I've never used the TypeScript error, nothing else. Now you can just initialize that particular font, right? Yeah, so before returning you can actually do it here, right? They have actually shown, right? You can just initialize a particular say inter font by using the subset and the subset and the display. Now what is the display swap? Display swap is actually a property, right, which is to say that load the fallback font, right, firstly, which is actually available in your browser itself, and the font is actually swapped when the font is actually loaded, right, inside the application, so that the load time is actually faster and you don't rely on the font, right? Because otherwise you will actually just keep on waiting until your font actually loads and the page will actually load at a later point of time, and this actually will just decrease your core web vital scores, right? And also will actually keep you low in the page rankings, and font used to play a major role in it. So yeah, we have actually used this inter, and the inter is actually initialized. The subset is actually latin. You can also use other subsets, right, like latin, and you have this display swap property being initialized. Yeah, and what you can do is that you can use this font. How you can use this font? If I actually give a def to this particular one, right, div, right, if I actually give this particular div inside it, my all of the pages are actually going to come. So if I actually use this class name is equal to something, okay, class name is equal to say intern no class name. So that's actually the thing which I need to do, right? Yeah, children, and then here we have the intern class name, right? So let's actually have a look. It needs to get cannot resolve at the next slash font. Why so? Everybody's also referring me that. Mhm. It can't resolve. Why so? Okay. Oh, sorry. Next slash fonts like Google. Okay, because we are actually using the Google fonts, right? Yeah. So here the import will be next slash fonts like Google because Inter is actually there, right? And that the errors actually came. Now, if I actually save the stuff, will it still come? No, it has been removed. And is this page you're using that font now? It's not using because it's inside there in the pages directory and not here. It's actually a new feature, right? New directory, so it will actually work on other pages like the home and other one. Let me actually go to the home page. Loading up correctly. Just install, restarting with the. Okay, so I need to restart. Okay. So it might be not loading up the thing because yes, it actually just installed now, and the desktop will need to be reinstalled, restarted. Believe it works now. Hmm. Okay. I was actually creating errors. The next slide fonts are Google Inter is actually imported, and it's not initializing the stuff. What is so? Yeah. Their logs build. Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay. So here I can see. I think I can type. Will it not allow me to type? Okay, so will it refresh? Mm-hmm. So, what's the problem? Font loader call to assign the fonts module scope and okay, so there are these errors. Content is got something where I'm actually missing out. Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Sorry. So I need to actually export, use this particular font property inside here, the global region, and not in the local one. Let's see, it's waiting, compiling, warning, warning. Going to fetch this one. Okay, yeah, refresh the font. Build is actually failed for now. And here we have this environment running now. It's actually working. Okay, so I believe that our font is actually getting used inside this particular page, right? Because we're actually using that class and enter a class and it's actually resolved. Whenever you're actually installing something, you can actually go to this particular icon, right? And you can actually go to this dev, right? Because dev is actually working on the terminal, right? And then you can actually hit refresh because of that the particular server is actually running again, and you can see the server logs here in the particular code sandbox.io, right? And yeah, this is how you can actually work in this particular project. And yeah, you are able to use the next that particular font into your next application, right? So you have this particular into the class name and also a class name and also okay. So one more thing is that you need to specify these particular things in the class name, and here okay, so you can also use the roboto font from the Google itself by by importing the roboto from the Google next phone slash Google, and then you can just use it here, and you can also specify the weight and other properties like 700 and all, right? And then specifying a subset. Okay, so Google fonts automatically subset, right? This reduces the size of the font file and improves the performance. Okay, if you want to only one particular subset that is a Latin, then you actually just import that particular one, so that you don't just bump up your particular bundle size, right? Because otherwise the Google fonts actually come in a bundle, right, which have a lot of subsets which you might not require. That's why it's actually the import in subsets. Okay, and globally for all of your fonts in the next is the font will be by using the function call. Okay, so if you want to actually just import every of your font to be selected, then you can actually globally define them into the font orders inside this export site next to config.ts, right? And that's actually the basic stuff, right? And then you can actually use your fonts, and then you don't need to actually specify that particular subset now, because earlier you were actually importing this way, right? That is, you were initializing the roboto font, and then whichever you have actually imported like roboto mono, and then you were actually specifying the subset, but everything is actually the Latin. Then you can actually specify in the next config.js here this way. Where is that? And also one more thing is that firstly you need to actually specify it using this particular class name, right? You will actually particularly specify this particular class name, but this is actually not applied now. This is actually not applied directly, right? You actually need to use it in the variable name, right? For the loaders, right, the font loader, you can actually specify the subsets in the options, right? In the options key in the next in the module that export in the next configure.js, and yeah, when you have to use it, firstly you will actually specify it in the class name, and then later on you have to actually go to the css file like this, and then you can actually use the font family to use a font inter. It will be actually used as a variable, right? Whenever you will actually specify that particular as a class name, right, then it will actually become a global variable. So in the app global the css, right, it will actually become the particular variable, right? And then you can actually use this particular variable in the font family itself, right? Because you have actually specified that in the h1, so it will actually come here, and then you can use it inside the where keyword, right? So we have the inter font, right? So we'll actually use this inter font. Let's just try it out. So here in the global css directory that's actually inside the app directory itself, I have this particular font, and let me actually use that one. So where is this? So I think I can actually style this particular link. Mhm. Okay, so let me actually try to give it a color. Let's see. Yeah, so it's working. This is actually got already good. So we can actually give it a font family. But one thing is that I've actually specified that inside that particular div, right? I've actually specified that inside here. Here I've actually specified the class name, so it will be only available for the children itself. And if I actually just want to give it to whole one, then I will specify here the class name, right? And then while actually going to my global CSS, right, you have seen that the font has actually changed a bit, right? Then you can actually specify the font family directly inside this. That is font family, and then var, which will actually use for var, and then I have this enter, and then this will be actually used. You will not see any changes because it's already been applied, right? Okay, so here only, sorry. So if I actually refresh, yeah, it has captured the phone. That's why it's actually happening. Otherwise, if you just remove it, you will actually see a change. Okay, so that's about the next slash font, right? You can actually specify here. The above example inter will be applied globally, and any H1 tag will be styled with the robotic mono, right? So means you can see that you have been applying the particular HTML font, right? You have been particularly applying the inter font available because you have specified it in the HTML. But if you have not actually applied a different font to a component which is actually inside that HTML one, then you will specify the font family inside that one. Means you will actually specify a different font family which is actually passed here, and inside the HTML you were passing that particular font family like this. That is, you are actually having two class names, right? One the inter dot variable and the font name. Sorry, that's actually a variable name. Okay, so you can either use the class name directly by using this class name so that it will be applied directly. But if you want to actually just only pass on the variable name, then you can actually use the variable itself, right? So interform dot variable. So if you want to actually use that variable method, then you will actually need to firstly actually let's go. So you will actually need to go here, and then inside the HTML, you will actually need to pass on the variable instead of the class name, right? So the Intel's variable will be actually passed. Okay, probably does not exist in the next one. Why is this so? Okay, so it does only consists of the song, the class names. I think I must need to import by another way. Let's see. Yeah, we have this inter dot variable name, and font is actually imported. Oh, okay. So if you want to actually just use this particular property, right, use this particular styling of the font as a variable, then you will actually need to import by this method, right? And that is actually, you will actually just use a particular variable which you are defining here, right? Other properties are still same, and then you will use that particular variable by because you are defining here, you will actually get the particular property, right? By using the dollar syntax. Is actually the template literals inside which you can actually insert the variables, right? So that's what you are actually doing. So enter dot what variable, right? And I will need to actually define the particular variable. Yeah, variable will be something like this. Enter, right, something like that, and that will actually come. After that I need a comma, right? This is done, and this will be actually inside the template literals. So let's actually do it. And we will need to put a dollar like this. Yeah, and now it will actually give me error. Yeah, enter dot variable was problem. And expected JSX identifier. Oh, just a curly braces is missing. What's the problem? Oh, no problem. Okay, so here we're actually using that, and inside the global CSS file, unrestricted token HTML. Is there any problem? What if I okay, what the doc says actually specify that's why there is enter of variable. and they have this variable property which is actually being defined there. It's actually creating an error. I might be missing. Okay, okay, sorry. One more thing is that is that template, but yes, I'm already using the lit. Okay, so this is not backtick, and this is actually a normal course. That's what the problem was. I hope it works now. Okay, it was your refreshing, right? And the font is actually applied here only, right? I see applied. Yeah, we've done that. Okay, so we have done for the fonts. Let's just go here. Okay, so local fonts. You can also use local fonts with the next slash font, where there's import at the rate next slash font slash local and specify the source of the local font file. You might have TFF or OTF, I don't know. What are the folder? Yeah, WFF. Yeah, these are the actual files which you have in your local directory. And if you want to use that, you can use it the next slash font. Firstly, you need to actually import the local font from the next slash font slash local, and then you will actually need to actually just initialize the local font by using the local font, and inside it you will actually specify that particular source folder, and then you will actually specify the display swap property. This display swap will be actually used for the optimization purposes, that is only load the font, only swap the font when it's actually loaded, and just show the fallback font. Otherwise you will actually need to wait. Now you have the export default function root layout, and inside it you have all the stuffs like the same. You will actually use a myfont.class name to actually directly specify that font, and otherwise you can actually use the variable name and use the variable inside the font family property inside the global css. You can also import multiple files at once by using this roboto, that is local font. Inside it you will have the source, and the source will be actually an array. That will be actually a path, that is this is the path of the file. You have the weight, then you have the style. So like that will actually happen. This is actually the weight, and you have these styles, right? So these are actually important. You will have this different types of the fonts, right? There's one is actually normal italic and with the different weights, so it will actually import accordingly, and then you can actually use. And then you can also use the tailwind css for the fonts, right? Means you can also use the next font with the tailwind css, by using the css variables, right? But the usage will be actually a little bit different, because you will first need to import the same way as you were actually doing earlier, but you need to specify the variables. Now you will have this particular html, right? And then here you will specify the same variables, right? Like earlier, no issues. But in the tailwind.config.js, right, there's a configuration file with the tailwind which is to specify which files must apply the tailwind on, something like that. So in the theme say key of the tailwind, you can actually specify the extend key, and inside the extend you will actually specify the font family, and inside the font family you can actually specify the sans to be say the that variable which actually referring to say inter, and the mono to be say another variable which you have say for the roboto, and it will work inside the single quotes only, right? You don't need to actually put the backticks, right? Also, because this is actually only a string, so it will be actually replaced everywhere where the css tailwind css is actually using up. So remember, theme, then extend, then font family, and then sans or sans or whatever, because we are actually specifying a replacement. Now preloading. When the font function is called on the page or the site, it's not globally available and the preloaded on all the routes. Rather, the font is only preloaded on the related route based on the type of the file where it is used, right? If it's a unique page, it's preloaded on the unique route for the page. If it's a layout, it's preloaded on the routes wrapped by the layout. If it's the root layout, it's preloaded on all the routes, right? So, okay. So listen, this is actually just a kind of speed loading which is actually happening behind the scenes on the basis of the thing of the page where you have imported the font. If you've actually imported the font in the root layout like we did, right? Let me show you, like we did in the root layout, we are actually doing that, right? So it will actually load it on all of the pages, right? But if you want to actually just load the font into a particular say different layout, right, which is actually wrapping a particular component, then it will be actually loaded for all of the pages which are actually inside that layout, right, which is actually inside that particular component. But if you are actually loading the font in on a particular page, then it will be loaded on that page only and not on other pages. That's actually just for the optimizing purposes. Now, every time you call the local font or the Google font function, the font is hosted as one of the instance on the application. Therefore, if you load the same font in the multiple files, multiple instances of the same font are hosted. In this situation, it is recommended to do the following, right? Call the font loader function in one shell file and export it as a constant. Import the constant in each file where you would like to use the font, right? So basically it's actually say a performance optimization. That is, if you will actually use the local font, right, a local font to Google font function inside your particular pages, right, then it will actually take up the memory, say take up the resources again and again, because it will be actually loading the particular font again and again. Instead, you can do what is that you can actually just load the font into one particular file, and then the return value will be actually exported as a constant, which can be actually used in the different files. That's actually what you can use the actually optimization method. Next, we can actually have a look at the image optimization things, right, and the scripts and other stuff. So these are actually the nicer one, which you can actually do. And this is actually the guide for, say, upgrade guide. We can actually go on for this particular file, particular guide, right? There are a lot of stuff, right? We have the data fetching, we have the font optimization, we have the scripts one. Let's actually quickly talk about the data fetching also, right? Yeah, because that's an important thing, right? This linking and navigation are actually either one, but the data fetching are actually say a bit difficult, right? That is how to actually fetch the data. So the next setting introduces a new way to fetch the data in the application. The API has been simplified to align with the React and web platform. The page will actually go through. Okay. What used to happen earlier was that you used to use the particular next get server side props and get static props function, right? But now the next is actually providing the fetch API itself to actually use for the data fetching, right? You have this the new data fetching system is built on the top of the native fetch, because it's actually using the native fetch API, but it's actually using on the server side, something like that is actually happening. And it's actually used to use async and await in the server component, because you can actually now use async and await in the server component itself, and it will actually run on the server side instead of the client side. That's actually a nice thing, right? React extends the fetch to provide automatic request deduping, and Next.js extend the fetch options object to allow each request to set its own caching and revalidating rules. You can actually set the caching also in your say in your say API, because right when you will actually cache the things you will actually use again and again for the same request, and you can actually revalidate the cache value when you actually think that after this particular point of time the API actually needs to be refreshed, so you can use this revalidate rule. Now, whenever possible, we recommend fetching the data inside the server components, right? The server components are the ones which actually runs on the server side, so we can actually have a look at that. The server and the client component, right? So server components, all the components inside the app directory and the React server components are by default. Okay, so these components which are actually inside the app directory are actually by default the server components. For specifying them to actually run at the particular client side, then you will actually need to use the use client. That's actually a string which you will actually use at the top of the particular page to actually use this component at the client side. These two things are also by default the server component, that the co-located component and the visual files are also server component. This allows you to automatically adopt the server components with no extra work and achieve the great performance out of the box. How will be actually getting the performance is that we'll be actually just using the server side rendering first, and then the whole page will be actually rendered on a client side, and there will be no waiting, right? Something like that will actually happen if you will use the server side components. Now, React Server components allow the developer to have the better leverage in server infrastructure. For example, our dependencies that previously would impact the JavaScript bundle size on the client side can instead remain entirely on the server, leading to improved performance. Right. So now, there were a lot of things which were actually running on the client side earlier, right? There was a large JavaScript bundle size on the client side because that need to be loaded on the client side only. But now, if you will actually just make up the things or make up the result at the server side only, and then you can just return the things on the server side only, then there's a decrease in the bundle size as well, right? So that's actually one of the benefit. Now I have the server component makes the React application feel similar to the PHP or the Ruby on Rails, but with the power and the flexibility of React for templating UI, right? Because now, as you have the server side components, right, what usually happen in the PHP, your whole of the UI is actually rendered on the server side only, and only the HTML page used to come on the client side. That's what's actually happening on the PHP, right? But now Next.js is also providing that particular kind of feature, but also with the power of flexibility of how you actually render the things, which are actually lesser available in the PHP. When our route is actually loaded in the lecture, the initial HTML is rendered on the server, right? The HTML is then progressively enhanced in the browser, right, allowing the client to take over the application and add interactivity, right, by asynchronously loading the Next.js and the React client side runtime. So this is actually what is actually happening behind the scenes, right? Firstly, you to actually render the initial page on the server side itself, and then we can actually enhance the particular HTML page according to our browser. And then we can actually send the particular page to the client side with the React runtime so that it actually become interactive. These all things used to happen. The base client side runtime is cacheable and predictable in size and does not increase your application growth. Okay, these are just the theory. So what is this client side? Client components enable you to add the client side interactivity to your application. The next year they are pre-rendered on the server and hydrated on the client. You can think of the client component as how Next.js 12 and the previous version work. The pages are free, right? These are actually the client side components, right? Which actually are working on the client side and which actually used to work and run on the client side itself. So a component becomes a client component when using the use client directory. As I actually mentioned, if you actually just mention inside the app directory, right? If you have say counter.js, right? As we have mentioned that we were actually using the folder structure of say folder name and then page.js, something like that was the structure, right? Which was actually for the particular page, right? But now what we can actually do is that we can actually we can also instead of making the folders we can also make the files directly like this app slash counter.js, and we can actually make our whole page inside that. It will be actually served by the route name slash counter, right, because it's actually inside app, it's actually inside the main directory. So yes, this will actually serving as a page, but yes, how to actually specify them to actually work at the client side, we'll actually use the use client. Maybe let me actually show you a quick example. You are getting bored, I know already, but yes, we need to actually learn from the doc itself because they are actually nicer. um so let's actually try out one thing. So let's actually inside the app directory, let's actually make another file like something like this, new file, and it will actually say client component dot js. We can also use the js files instead of tss files, and then we have this function. You will also need to import, you can also do this way, constant say client comp is equal to something like this as the error syntax function, right? And then you can just export default client component, so like that, and then here you can actually return div and here client side component, some dummy text, and let's actually do a console.log. I am running here. Yeah, so we can actually have a console.log statement. If you actually save it, then no issues, nothing will happen. But yes, if you actually navigate to the slash client component, then it must show this particular text if we are actually not doing any mistake. So page not found, client component, some spelling mistake must be there, client component. Okay, seriously. Client component, I'm not missing any spellings. I should try renaming. So it will not allow me to use this. Strange. It will not allow me to use this. Seriously. Okay, so it means that only folder structure is actually allowed. You are actually not allowed to use something like this as your files, right? You will first need to actually create a, but the Next.js docs actually says that. Let's actually review. They're actually showing that inside the app directory you have this counter.js, and if we have something like that, then we can actually get to the route of this slash counter, right? For example, you want a component directory, however, the app directory enables you to co-locate the components with the pages, which was not previously possible in the okay. That's actually weird. That's actually debug. So what is about app directory, right? Here, right? So let's go here, and the client component is actually a client comp client comp is actually not working. And what if we actually create a folder, new folder, like client component, and then just move that client component.tsx, where is that, inside this particular directory. And inside this you can actually just rename this to say page.tsx, right? And it must work now. Okay, so this is actually this client component, and this is actually working. So it means that it doesn't actually allows you to do that, but that must be allowed. I don't know why it's actually not allowed. Okay, so let's actually have a look at this console log statement, right? So if I actually go to this particular console, right, this is dev logs, right? I am saying that I'm seeing that this is actually I'm running, means this is actually server side, right? So it's actually running a server side. And if I actually go to this particular client side, right, that is actually client component, then we can actually get to see that particular page here in some time. Yeah, loading up that particular component. Yeah, a bit of time because it actually server rendered. And these are the elements which are here. Okay, so taking a bit of time. Yeah, client side component, right? And you can actually see that in the console nothing is actually coming because it's actually not working on the client side, right? But if I wanna actually make it to work at the client side, so I will actually use this particular statement, that is use client, right, something like that. And then if I actually refresh this particular page, mhm, it's actually slower, right? It's actually really slow, loading and loading and loading. And now the new request has came, right? This is actually the wait request. This is actually the event one. Let's see after this if it actually comes. So if I've actually requested up the things, it's actually still loading. So yeah, the thing is that basic thing is that you will actually need to use this particular declaration on the top of your document of a page if you actually want to make it work on the client side instead of the server side, because here you can have the particular so browser, right? Inside the browser you can actually have okay, there's one preview. Mhm. So no, it's not working, but yes, after using that particular client side thing, right, you will actually be able to have a look at that particular console statement here, right, because actually now working on the client side. The main difference is that when you will actually use that particular server side component, then you will be actually able to have a look at that particular same code being rendered by the server, means it's actually available on the source code. But if you're actually using the client side rendering, right, then you will be actually not able to use that, right? You will be actually unable to have a look at it on the client side itself, and you will not be able to look at it in the view page source, because it's actually not sent by the server. It's actually being recreated or say rendered on the client side itself. So that's actually the basic thing, right, which will happen, right? So that's actually the basic difference between the client side and server side rendering. And here in the particular say devlogs, we might not be still able to have a look at that. Like if you actually go to the devlogs, right? Okay, so this might actually come in here, I think. And I use client. Let me see. Yeah, this one only. Okay, compile, waiting, and they're coming. Taking a lot of time, but yes, if you like to try to do in localhost, so it will be faster because there are sometimes internet issues like that, so that will not work. So yeah, there was actually a quick walkthrough to the basic things, right? Client side and server side components, right? So that's actually done, and these are the things which you can actually read, right, while doing that. You can't use the on click and on change on the server side, right? You can't do these interactive, because on the server there is nothing like that, nothing like the DOM elements, right? It used to just fetch the things up. You can't use state, use reducer, and use effect. These all are actually not at all supported on the say a server side, only at the client side, because so this is actually important, say docs, right? We can actually use, right? So you will need to mark the component as a use client when they can use the hooks, when they need, when they use a client hook such as a use state and use effect. It's best to leave the component that do not depend on the client hooks without. It's best to leave the component that do not depend on the client hooks without the directive, so that they can be automatically be rendered on the server components when they aren't imported by another client component. This has ensure the smallest amount of the client's script. Okay, so you actually want to just remove the client side scripts, right? You actually want to remove the client side rendering at most which you want, right? Because if you will actually keep the things on the client side only, then they will not be pre-rendered and they will not be actually ranked higher in the core web vitals, right? And because SEO will be actually lower as your page will be actually rendered on the client side itself, so you don't want that. You want to actually keep it to the minimum. So yeah, in the server components now you can actually fetch data right at the backend resources directly. You can actually just access those resources directly on the backend, right? You can also work with the sensitive information in these server components only, because if you not specify the use client and you have no use effects like thingy in your server component, then you can actually use this sensitive information in those components only, because they are actually not accessible to the clients itself, right? They are only accessible to the particular server only, right? Yeah. So that was the basic stuff. Mm, okay. And more about this is that, okay, using custom hook that depend. Okay, you also can't use hooks, right? Which actually depends on the browser APIs and side effects or effects, which the hooks which are actually implementing use effect can't be actually used in this particular component, right? And you can't use the class based component here. What's It's actually strange. You can actually do the class based component usage in the server side component, but whatever the classes were here will actually become right on the client side if you use use the client director, right? So yeah, you can also import the server side components into the client side components. Server and the client component can be interleaved in the same component tree. Behind the scenes, React will merge the work of both the environments. However, if the in the React there is a restriction around importing the server component inside the client component, because server components might have someone only code, right? Because you can only you just now you have read that you can actually use the secrets and the things like keys in the server component, so they must actually not come at the front end, right? They must actually not come at the client side, because the user can access that. So someone only, or you might also access the database. How you will actually access the database from the client side? So React has some rules. For example, importing a server component in the client component will not work. So importing a server component inside in a client component will not work like this. You have this app client component dot JS. You have this say use client, and then import server component from this server component, right? Something like that. So if you will actually import the particular server component inside the client, right, and the server component, okay, they have actually not shown which is the server component. Uh, that will actually not work, because if you have the pattern will not work, you can import a server component in the client component. Yes, you can't just import it, but I think that the vice versa might be true. Okay, so you have this particular server component which actually using some data fetching API and all. You can actually import it in the client component. You cannot import it in the client component like this, right? And so you can pass. Now how will interact then this is a solution. Instead you can actually pass the sub component as a child prop of the child client component. You can do this by wrapping both the components in another server component, for example, right? The thing is that you can push the things onto the server components, but you can't pull the thing to the client component, something like that. So the solution here is that you have this particular client component, right, which has this some children, right, which are actually here, and then you have this page.js in which you are actually just importing the client component and the server component, right? And then you are just doing what? Inside the client component you are actually passing on the server component that will actually come as a child. So that's actually allowed, right? Is actually where inside that particular client component, if you want to actually directly import the server component and then work with that, that will not work. But instead, if you actually want to just use that particular server component, then you can actually create another page that is actually page.js, right? This pattern works. You can actually pass the server component, so you can actually have this particular page app slash page.js. And then you can actually just import the server component. You can actually pass that particular component as a children of that particular client component, and that will actually come here. That will now work. This pattern will work because you are actually doing it from the third side. So I think the React will actually first render the things or the calculate the things of this server component and then pass the resultant thing to the client side only, and will not pass the actual content, right? So this is actually allowed. With this pattern, React will know it needs to render the server components on the server before sending the result. Yeah, that's what we were actually getting. Which doesn't contain any server side code to the client. From the client side component perspective, as a child to already rendered. So it's actually kind of say a code which is actually being just resulted, means a code which has been actually just calculated the result of. So in this way, you can actually use that stuff also, right? Yeah, so yeah, that's all of the basic stuffs about say React, right, and the Next.js, right. We're just getting started with the Next.js, and we'll actually dive deeper from this docs also, and we'll actually learn together the deeper stuffs with the server component and the client side component, also the data fetching, how to fetch the data, how to use the data, and everything up and there. Saying thank you so much, guys, for actually listening to me in this particular tutorial. Nice. Have a nice day.